I've actually been lucky enough almost once per year for the last 18 years, I've been able to be on commentary for Chaotic Wrestling. I wanted to be a guy who could tell the stories. I think wrestling is the kind of place where stories are crucial. Wrestling is like the ultimate entertainment, right? It's got all of the bells and whistles. Chase Del Monte, he's my fraternity brother. He chased his dream and he became a professional wrestler. Followed him along for the ride. Jamie was backstage with us and basically said, I booked you for 2 shows. I hope you don't suck. Rich Palladino is the greatest of all time. Rich and I have a chemistry. We have a bond. Sultan of Sarcasm is one of them. I used to wear the scarf. It would be 10,000 degrees in, an Elks Lodge, and I'm wearing a gigantic scarf like an idiot. I love comedy in wrestling. I want wrestling to be fun. I was lucky enough in ECCW to get a one-off interview with Tommaso. I went from being like 400 pounds to now like kind of having a new life. Matt Logan got fired and I got fired.
Ladies and gentlemen, hosted by Coach C, Chris Sanders, this is Best for Business.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Another episode of Best for Business. I'm pumped for this one. RJ Deluise, man, thank you so much for joining me for this one.
I'm excited to be here, Coach. Thanks for having me.
Now, I see you flexing. Let's get it right off the rip. Do you think we have hope this now? When this drops, it's probably towards the end of the season, but do you think we have any hope?
As a Mets fan, we must always have hope. Okay. However, we also must be realistic about our chances. I think Pete's going to lock in. We're going to see probably 52 from Pete by the end of the year. Okay, write it down. We're going to see 52 home runs by Pete. He's going to have 110 RBIs. Okay, Lindor's going to heat up. The pitching, starting pitching is a problem, Coach. We need to get the starting pitching. You got to go more than 2 innings. 2 1/3 is not going to cover it. And so this is why I'm a commentator, because I have to talk about sports. This is what we do, Coach.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. So I'm curious for you, when you talk about starting off for you pro wrestling, what was it about it that you wanted to get involved with?
That's exactly it. Baseball, right? So baseball's the way in for me, right? And so I did a lot of playing baseball, but I also did a lot of commentary with baseball, right? So I do some PA announcing. I would always be at the fields playing ball, announcing ball. I would talk about sports at school. I would talk about sports to PA announce for all the different sports that were going on. So if it was basketball or different sports that I was a part of, I was always doing commentary, things like that. And so for me, it was really important to be able to make that transition because I never wanted to be Ken Griffey Jr. I never wanted to be Ric Flair. I never wanted to be Hulk Hogan. I wanted to be the guy that was talking about those guys, right? And so that's what brings me joy about this type of work is not the, whether or not I am super interested in the wrestling per se. I love wrestling, but I'm really here because I love doing the talking about it and promoting it.
Did you have a moment where you finally decided the commentating is what you wanted to do, or did you just love it as general, just more?
I think it was the kind of thing where I never really wanted to be like an in-ring competitor, a guy who was going to be a wrestler, Yeah. I wanted to be a guy who could tell the stories, right? Nice. And so wrestling, like you have always talked about on here, is about telling stories. And I believe in that. And I think wrestling when it's its best, and there's different flavors for everybody, but I think wrestling is the kind of place where stories are crucial. They're center to anything that's going on. And so if you're really good at wrestling, you're really good at telling stories. And so I thought my service that I could provide would be to tell the stories in the best way possible, to get these guys over, as they say in wrestling, but to really get the promotion over, to get the guys out there, to get their character out there, to get their ideas out there, to promote whatever they were trying to do in the ring to folks that might be watching at home or watching it on DVD at the time, because that's when I started. There was VHS tapes and DVDs. Yeah. I'm an old man.
I say it all the time, especially recently come back to Chaotic Wrestling. You have, I don't want to say the gift of gab in sort of way, but you do. So I'm curious for you, did you always have that confidence?
I think you seem similar to me in this regard, right? We're guys who just like chatting about stuff, right? We like engaging people in conversation. We like having chats with guys about stuff and just learning about them, right? And so that natural curiosity is part of who I am. And I think that you got to kind of have that love and that desire behind it, right, to kind of push you through. And I think for me, I've always been a talker. I've always been a guy who gets his desk moved out into the hallway because I'm chatting too much, because I like it. I like having fun with people. I like engaging in conversations and learning about people, or just making jokes, because life's kind of scary and crazy if you pay attention, Chris. It's not great out there. Yeah. We got to lighten up a little bit. And so wrestling is like the ultimate entertainment, right? It's got all of the bells and whistles, and they're telling intricate, cool stories, good versus evil. It's eternally true. And so it's the kind of stuff that I get excited about when I'm telling these stories, because I want people to be as excited as I am about it. And it's not something I'm faking. I'm legitimately this excited when I'm talking about wrestling because I love it.
Wow. So we talk about you love baseball, and that's your way into pro wrestling, sort of the background with the commentary. How do you go from commentating baseball or playing baseball to pro wrestling?
Well, so the pro wrestling story is interesting. So I go to college with this kid you may know, Chase Del Monte. You've had him on the show, right? You've heard of him. So he's my fraternity brother, right? So he's my younger brother in the fraternity, right? So I'm in the fraternity. I'm older than him. He and I go back 20 plus years now. And so he decided to go to Killer Kowalski's professional wrestling school and pursue a career in professional wrestling along with his other career. And he was a bachelor, from Villanova, right? He got his Villanova degree, as did I. And everyone said to him, Chase, that's a terrible idea. Well, it was Kevin. Kevin, that's a terrible idea. You shouldn't do that. And I was one of the few people who said, no, getting a bachelor's degree makes total sense. Then go be a professional wrestler. That makes complete sense. We would watch Monday Night Raw on his couch. We would watch SmackDown at the house, all the pay-per-views, right? We loved wrestling. Yeah. And so we would sit around and watch it, probably like you and your boys would do, right? You get around, sit on the couch, you watch wrestling, you're talking about the storylines, you're laughing at all the promos and all the stuff. That's us, right? That's what we were doing. And so he goes and trains at Killer Kowalski's professional wrestling school. Everybody tells him it's a terrible idea. It turns out it was actually a pretty good idea for him, right? Not bad. Turned out pretty good, right? So, but he had to have that desire, right? That love for it. And he always did. And so he chased his dream and he became a professional wrestler. So I kind of just, on the coattails of that, followed him along for the ride. Wow. And so I was lucky enough where I was able to be in the crowd. I watched him starting in 2004 when he started up there. I would travel from New York at the time, and I would drive all the way out just to cheer in the crowd, just to root for Chase Del Monte, who was making his debut in chaotic wrestling. And so that's where I started. 2007 is when I really got my first opportunity to be on the mic with Palladino, and that's its own story. But really how I got here is all because of Chase Del Monte. There's two people. There's Chase Del Monte, of course, and there's Jamie Jamakowski and Adult, who, ran chaotic wrestling and were kind enough to give me the opportunity to do this.
Now, we talk about Rich Palladino. I texted you the other day out of nowhere. It was just recommended a podcast. You, John Walters, Jamie, and Rich. I absolutely loved it. So what was it? I was watching a lot of old school chaotic. Just the connection that you had with Palladino. Was it always there?
Always. From the first moment we sat next to each other. From our first night together, Jamie was backstage with us and basically said, I booked you for 2 shows. I hope you don't suck. And I hoped that I didn't suck. I was hoping that was the case, but I knew I could do the talking, right? If you've sat and tried to do an entire show's worth of commentary, I'm here to tell you, talking about wrestling for 3 hours straight when you're seeing the exact same thing pretty much, an arm drag, Chris, it is a very, very tough thing to make sound exciting and different at the 2.5 hour mark, right? It's not easy. Yeah. But Rich and I have a chemistry. We have a bond. We have a back and forth, a quick just rapport that you can't sort of make. You either have it with somebody or you don't. Yeah. Rich and I always just had it. We had that chemistry from day one. Nice. And he's, just one of the most underrated, underappreciated, and under-talked about sort of, wrestling personalities in history from my perspective. I'm overstating it in no way. Yeah. Rich Palladino is the greatest of all time. He's working 16 shows this month.
Insane.
He's 900 years old, Chris. He's older than me. Okay. Wow. He should not be out there. Bacabella is the only guy older than him. He's been out since the 50s, like the 1850s. Yeah. Bacabella is the only guy older than Palladino, the only one. Yeah. And so he's been doing this forever. And so I was lucky enough to get to sit next to, he was a veteran when I started in 2004, right? Wow. So 2007, when I start, Rich has been doing wrestling then for 10 years, right? Nice. So he's been in wrestling forever at that point. He's ECW famous. I know Rich from ECW. He's like a big deal, right? In 2007. He's still doing it at a high level, even more than ever. And more people are getting to see him. And so if anything, like, people need to tune into Rich Palladino and watch the second half of his career, I don't know what even number it would be of this career, because it's epic what he's been able to do and what he brings to a show. When you see Rich on a show, you know it's going to be the highest quality show. The production level, the type of wrestling you're going to see is going to be the highest quality. And that's what Rich brings.
Yeah, absolutely. So when Jamie originally said you have 2 shows, Don't Suck, and you're getting into pro wrestling, how does RJ Deluise come up?
Great question. So I had the DeLuise piece, right? Okay. I was like circling around Dom DeLuise because he's a fat guy from, earlier in cinema in the 70s. So I'm going around in circles. I'm like, okay, Dom DeLuise. DeLuise is a funny last name. It's close to DeSico, which is my last name, right? Okay. So I'm like, okay, so close enough. I like DeLuise. That'd be funny. It's close enough. And then I'm like, Jack DeLuise, maybe, like, you don't know Jack, but that's not funny. As a first idea, it was a dumb first idea, as most are, but it was an idea. So I go to Chase. I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of playing with this DeLuise thing, Jack DeLuise. He goes, I got Rudiger on the brain. And I'm like, Rudiger? Is that even a name of a person? Like, that doesn't even make sense. But then we took Rudiger, we took Jack, we kind of put them together. I've since sort of taken the J and made it Jamie because I love Jamie so much. So it's, in the interim, right? So it's Rudiger, Jamie, DeLuise, depending on who you ask. It's all made up, right? And that's the beauty of all this. It's all made up, Coach. Yeah. And it's just fun. And so I tried to come up with the most ridiculous name I could. That wasn't my name. And so RJ Deluise is how we got here.
What about the presentation, the attire? I forgot what Rich called you in that podcast. The Scarf Sultan of Sarcasm, was it?
We got a couple of fun nicknames. Okay. Scarf Sultan of Sarcasm is one of them. I used to wear the scarf. It would be 10,000 degrees in, an Elks Lodge, and I'm wearing a gigantic scarf like an idiot. But I wore the scarf because I just thought it was obnoxious. I thought it was stupid.
Different,
and I thought
too.
people would just laugh at it and be like, look at this schlub walking in here with, like, he's dressed in a suit and he's got a scarf on. Why? Like, that doesn't even make sense. And that was it for me. It didn't make sense. It's stupid. I love comedy in wrestling. I love silliness in wrestling. I love the lighter side of it. And so there is a place for guys beating the crap out of each other, and that is a thing, and I get that, and I respect the crap out of that. But I am more of my flavor that I enjoy is really the storytelling, the comedy, the jokes, the character aspect of it.
Yeah. When we look at your career, I'm curious, how do you go from commentary to at one point managing Matt Logan?
Well, so that was kind of the peak of things for us as a crew, right? So you kind of got the scoop from the Logans and Chase. They were running like thieves. Yeah. I was in there with that crowd. I was lucky enough to be around some of the greatest to ever do it. Handsome John, Malone, some name dropping, Ciampa. Yeah. I'm watching these dudes in their prime, right? And I'm lucky enough to have a front row seat to call their matches. And so the Alicia Edwards of the world, who, you have Nikki Rocks, who's innovating women's wrestling at a time where no one was doing the things they were doing. They were wrestling at a high level. They've been doing that. Alicia's been doing it for 20 plus years now. Yeah. I was able to watch Alex Arion, these guys who were just incredible athletes, incredible storytellers, incredible in the New England area, who a lot of people wouldn't have seen necessarily nationally because of the way wrestling was at the time, but some of the greatest wrestlers that I could possibly imagine. And so I was lucky enough that Jamie gave us an opportunity at kind of the peak of our having fun to be able to go in and manage one night. And so it was the most fun I've had in a wrestling ring. I can definitely say that. Nice. And it was me, Matt Logan, Brian Logan, Chase Del Monte, and we had Matt Bennett, who was the referee. So nice. It was four of my favorite people and myself all got to be together in the ring at the same time, and that was just a ton of fun. So It was great.
I'm curious. I think you were managing him at the time. How does Matt Logan not get fired and you don't?
So Matt Logan, I did get fired. So Matt Logan got fired and I got fired. So you didn't get the full story from the Logan. You got half the story. No. So he just did from the Logan brothers. There was another commentary partner who was involved in this, that me. And so I also was in the back having trunk beers at the time. So we were partying pretty hard at the time, Coach. And so it was a different era. And would I do that now? No. Would I want that on my shows? No. Jamie did what he needed to do, and he made a decision. Now, was it incongruent with some of the events that were happening around the same time? Certainly. You can take that up with Jamie, who I love, and the Logans and Chase, who I also love. These are my dudes. And so I have no hard feelings for anyone anywhere. I was fired as part of that, but I was back in like 9 months. So it was like a half fire. Like Jamie fired us to make it look like he was firing. We were having too much fun. Chris, is the bottom line. We were enjoying ourselves. We were having way too much fun. And he was like, I got to shut this down. And that's fair. Yeah. So he did. And so for 9 months, we cooled off, right? And that was great for the Logans, as you heard, because they went out and kind of did some different wrestling that they hadn't done. And for me, I didn't have anything else going on, so I just kind of hung out. And then I came back and did commentary again, which is the story for me. I've actually been lucky enough almost once per year for the last 18 years, I've been able to be on commentary for Chaotic Wrestling. And so I take a lot of pride in that because there's no one else who's done that I know of. And Rich is the consistent piece, right? And so you got Pat, you got Julian, you got guys who've done incredible work on commentary, and I love those dudes. They're amazing, and they've held up that end of it. But I've been a consistent piece of the history of Chaotic, and I feel like really proud of that because it's specific to Chaotic, and I think Chaotic is a place that's felt like a home to me, not just because of Chase and because of Killer Kowalski and that connection, but because I feel like the best wrestling I've been a part of, the family that I feel a part of is that Chaotic Wrestling family. And so as dysfunctional and crazy as we are, I love us, and I'm really proud of the work that we've put forward and the groundwork that was laid by the guys in my generation to see where it is now from where it was. It absolutely built on that legacy in the greatest ways possible. And the product, has maintained its high quality content throughout. And I think that's a testament to both Jamie's leadership and to what Chase brings to the table, along with Scott, obviously. So just awesome to see and be a part of. Just to be a small part of that's amazing.
When you're name dropping all these names, there's one name I want to ask. I love asking if there's any stories. Is there a Rick Fuller story to you that stands out?
I'll tell you Rick Fuller's story. He is the kindest, sweetest man maybe to ever live. So he's a gigantic lumberjack looking dude, scary physically, intimidated, but the sweetest man ever. And honestly, the most scared I've ever been in a locker room ever in my life. He read a letter to us in the Chaotic locker room once to kind of like level set because dudes were like really out of control. It wasn't me. I found out it wasn't me, which I was like, phew, because it was wrestlers and I wasn't a wrestler. So
was
I was
he like a locker room leader at the time, probably?
He was not just a leader. He was a veteran with the level of respect. I mean, he's a WCW Rick Fuller. He made a career out of wrestling, and that was what he was saying to the locker room. Like, I've made a career out of this. I take this seriously. We all need to take this seriously. And he was absolutely right about that. And so people absolutely changed the way that they were acting based on that because of his leadership. And so, in the big leagues, you talk about guys like The Undertaker and people taking the locker room. You see somebody like Big Rick Fuller talking, you're going to sit and you're going to be quiet and you're going to listen. Guys, even like me, who talks too much always, I'm going to sit and listen because Big Rick Fuller has that presence and he's earned it and he deserves it. And so, he literally the sweetest man, the kindest man, and just a lovely human being. If you ever got chopped by him, you would not be able to breathe physically for probably weeks because of his chops were so legendary. And it would reverberate through the Elks Lodge or the PAV in ways that you can't possibly imagine.
Wow. When you talk your career, obviously Chaotic Wrestling, but how does ECCW come for you?
So, at the time, and I think guys have talked about this on here, there were a lot of different options for guys in the New England area. So you had guys who had rings and were taking opportunities, to run their own shows. And so handsome Johnny Nash, he had or Hollywood Johnny Nash, excuse me. He had his own promotion that he was running, and he called it ECCW. And so I was lucky enough when I wasn't doing Chaotic shows to be able to go over there and do some shows. And they were just a lot of fun. We had a blast. And Johnny Fabulous is kind of the whole reason I got into this. It was John Cena's dad. You guys know Johnny Fabulous. So he was doing commentary with Rich before at Chaotic. He was like, I want to manage. I want to do other stuff. Maybe you could do this, RJ. I was like, okay, sure. So I did the thing. And then in ECCW, he was over there too. He was kind of doing stuff there. So I kind of came over with Fabo. And was lucky enough to just hang out over there and do. So there I ring announced because they didn't have a ring announcer. So I did ring announcing. I did commentary. I had a storyline at one point. I was a Scarf World Order. Just ridiculousness, right? Yeah. But had fun with the fans. It was a fun, and this is the centerpiece of anything I want to bring to this message. I want wrestling to be fun. And so if I'm going to be there, it's going to be a fun time. It might be ridiculously fun and it might be at my expense, which is always okay. I like wrestling in the most entertaining way possible. And so I want people to leave feeling like they got all of their entertainment value. And so it was funny because when I was leaving Chaotic, the second to last show I was at, the fans were insane. If you saw the interview, I got outside and they were screaming their heads off. These people are losing their mind because the product is so good. The entertainment value is so good. The stories are so good that it translates to anyone, whether it's the first time you were there or the 50th time. It's still such an engaging tale that you can't turn away. And so I love that about wrestling, and that I get to see that up front. It's incredible. So ECCW was a blast. It's a ton of fun. Just a silly place to do wrestling, but I love it. Oh, geez, I'm breaking stuff. I loved everything about it.
What was the idea behind the Scarf World Order?
Well, we had some fans who were very rabid, and they were Smarks before Smarks, and so lovely dudes. But they were cheering for me too much, right?
Okay.
And so we had to kind of like curb it a little bit with the Scarf World Order. So there's promos out there, me dropping legs on people and being ridiculous. And I was much larger, right? So like the other thing that we haven't talked about, obviously, is my weight loss. I was a much larger dude, and so. Physically, it was silly to see me moving around and doing wrestling stuff. I'm a gymnast and an athlete, so don't get it twisted. I could do stuff at a large size. I could do round offs and things. Don't start making up stories here, Chris.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it wasn't a look that was necessarily going to translate to television or anything. I was literally doing it as a hobby to be fun, and so for me. That's the stuff I enjoyed is Chaotic had a really high level of production. And so that was where I did commentary, but ECCW is where I got to just be silly and have fun and just put on a show for people. So one of the coolest things was we did a Halloween show and a kid came dressed as me. He put a big, pillow underneath his belly. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Kid just dressed as me. That's dumb. Right. But how cool that he thought, oh, I'm going to dress like this idiot who stands up here. Right. So that's what wrestling is though. For that kid, he sees RJ Deluise, this idiot in the ring, and that's what he's interested in. Okay, great. That's what I loved, right? That's what I was interested in. So maybe, you connect to the wrestlers. Maybe you connect to the guy who's doing the podcast interview, and that's what you want to do. Mm-hmm. Wrestling's got a spot for everybody to do that. And I think it's an entry point for all of us to work on our art, right? And that's what this is. It's an art form.
One thing about you were, I would say, ahead of the game at one point. What was the inspiration behind Deluise, Delights, and Disasters, was it called? Because you were doing those, and people even nowadays aren't even doing things like that.
I was blogging on WordPress and all these things, way back, and it was a passion project, like this is for you, Chris, right? So you gotta love it. So again, I love telling the stories of Chaotic. So I would just type up, the storylines with my silly little takes on it. And, the Biff Busicks of the world were feuding and doing things. And I would, of course, have a perspective that would be ridiculous. And I would be putting over the bad guys and making it sound like they had a reason to be upset with the guy who, did them wrong on the good side. And so it was fun. And it was an opportunity to just, again, highlight the quality of the stories that were being told, because I wanted to augment the stories. I never wanted to be in the story. I wanted to make the story shine. I wanted people to hear the story and feel the story the same way I was enjoying it. And so I love, as a fan, wrestling. And so I want people to have that experience when they come into it and go, man, he really likes this. I think there's something here. I like it too, right? Or maybe I should like it more than I do because he's really way too excited about it.
Yeah. Is there like one article or something that sticks out that you wrote?
I have a couple of, ones that I enjoyed that I felt like, were pretty funny. The circulation was me, the Logans, the guys in Jersey would read it, Dan and Tommy, the Blowout Boys would read it, and they were nice to me about it. And so they'd be nice. Guys would say, oh, that's nice, RJ. But it was for me to give back, right? Yeah, okay. And so it's why you do this, right?
Yeah,
it's like
sure.
it's because I love this piece of it, which is like, let's just tell the stories, right? Let's make this fun for everybody. And so there was a couple of articles where I felt like, I said some risque stuff, but I've done that on commentary too, and I probably would have been canceled many times.
Yeah.
But luckily on VHS tape, you can't get canceled.
That's smart. Yeah, love it.
You can't tax the money in the wall, and you can't get canceled off of VHS tape. Write that down, Chris.
I love it. Has anyone ever gotten triggered by something you wrote or said?
It has happened. And so there's been times where I have had to kind of backtrack a little bit. And people have listened back to commentary and said to me, whoa, what was that word? And so, listen, again, you're saying words out loud for hours. Things can come out that are a little crazy. And also I'm playing a character, right? And so it's an amplified version. It's an insane version of a human. It's not even a real person, right? Yeah. I'm playing a character. And so this isn't my opinion on the thing. Whatever it is going to be 10,000 times whatever the opinion is, right? And so that's what wrestling is. It's not small stuff. You got to do everything larger, right? Everything has to be big. And so if you don't have that kind of energy, you can't be here, right? This isn't for you. This is, you gotta love this thing.
Yeah, you mentioned, I'm curious, when did yoga come in the first picture? That's something that you wanted to start doing.
I didn't. So I didn't want to do yoga. What turned out was I was over 400 pounds. And so I needed to lose weight. And so what I did was I was familiar with DDP yoga. I was familiar with DDP, obviously Diamond Dallas Page, who's the Hall of Fame wrestling. And so he's a WWF Hall of Famer. And so I was lucky enough to be able to start up with that program. I got some weight loss surgery along with the DDP yoga. And so now I teach my own yoga program through Yoga Body is the name of the company that I work with. And I have classes every couple of days. I teach a class in yoga, and it keeps me active and it keeps me flexible, and it's part of my health routine, but it's also part of kind of how I went from being like 400 pounds to now like kind of having a new life. And so, yoga is a huge piece of that, and DDP is a huge component of that. And since this is a wrestling, we're talking indies here, but David Dallas Page, I'm not name dropping. I literally did his program, and it is awesome. And I think anybody who's looking to get an entryway into yoga, DDPY is a fantastic way to do that. And so, or you want to come work out with me, I'm here too. That's another option. But either get the app or come work out with me. There's my commercial.
How long did it take for your process from when you first started yoga to now?
So I was, I'm like currently a little over 200 pounds. I was 400 plus pounds in 2020. I'd lost weight a couple times throughout there, so I'd had some ebbs and flows. But I really got serious in 2020, right before the pandemic. I actually had my weight loss surgery 2 weeks before the pandemic hit. I went back to work for a day and the pandemic hit, and then I was able to stay home for a little bit, work from home, figure out my diet, figure out my exercise routine, and then really just kind of lock in and make sure that I was doing the things I needed to do to keep myself healthy. And so yoga's been a big piece of that. I'm very active, walking and running and doing things, but and my nutrition has to be on point. It's a mindset shift for me. I love eating. I love doing things in a big way, Chris. I don't know if I've communicated that with my voice or my bodily motions, but I don't do anything small. And I don't think life is worth living in a small way, Chris, right? Life's exciting. And so let's have fun and let's enjoy it. And let's not sit around and be mopey and whine all the time, because I could do that. That's a waste of my time. I want to enjoy my time that I have here. And so
when we talk your journey, obviously you mentioned earlier you try to do at least once a year, do chaotic wrestling. When do you decide it's time to come down?
One of those things, I often joke, with Mike Verna, or, when I see guys who come in every once in a while too, I'm on a Legends contract, right? So I have to keep up my Legends contract, right? So I have to meet a certain number of deliverables to keep up my Legends contract. It's a lucrative deal. Okay. It's a very, we don't talk about the specifics, all right, because I don't want to bankrupt Chase and Scott, but it's a serious figure in the zeros, all right? It's in big zeros. I come down when there's a need for somebody on a third commentary, when there's like a big event, or one of the guys needs to be out for a good reason, or I just feel like I'm in town and I want to come do a show, and I'll reach out and I'll say, hey Chase, I'm going to be up in 3 weeks. You guys got a show. What do you think? And he says, come on down whenever. And so having that open door and having that ability to be part of that family, and just have it be pretty natural that I just happen to be there. It's like, oh, RJ's on the show today. That's pretty standard. And I like that, because it's not a big deal that I'm there. I just show up every once in a while and do commentary and make jokes. And, I think the things that I kind of look to now is a lot of what I've always kind of hoped I brought, which is the promotion of the wrestling and the stories and the next generation. Each generation's come up, and I've gotten lucky enough to get to call their matches. And now I get to see almost like a third generation of guys and girls going in there, and just the quality and the skill level and the professionalism and just the production value, all of it has always been at the top. It just continues to grow. And it's like, just when I think it's going to get like, oh man, they've hit the peak, it just gets better. And so getting to be a small piece of that every once in a while, is fantastic. But I don't necessarily like pick and choose which ones I go to. It's sort of just like catch as catch can. I'm a catch as catch can kind of wrestler. That's how I love it.
I'm curious for you when you talk about chaotic wrestling. Obviously, the production gets better and better, but is there any difference in the locker room from when you first started chaotic wrestling and now, you think?
I think locker rooms evolve, right? And I think the sport, the spectacle, the promotion of the events is different than it was. It was a very regional thing. It was a very territorial thing, and it was a very insular thing for a really long time. I think now, just the way it's opened up to folks with Netflix, with Hulu, with all of the sort of ways in which everybody kind of social media, people now know that there's going to be a halftime at the event where you're going to be able to buy all the stuff from wrestlers. That didn't happen back in the day, right? So like I would try to sell these Scarf World Order t-shirts, and I'd sell 5 of them, and I'd be pumped because like that nobody sold anything. So I was like, oh, this is great. That happens all the time now. So like, it's not really the locker room itself. It's more just the business has changed, and guys evolve and move through it. And that's cool to watch, because I'm not in it that way, right? I'm just tangential to the whole thing. I'm along for the ride as I've been since the beginning. And I think that's sort of, part of what I'm here to do is make sure I'm giving the next generation a better setup than what was given to me. And each time I show up, I feel like that's what's happening. And so, not because of me, because I'm lucky enough to be a part of a system that continues to improve, right? And so that's a value system within that company. And I think that's why they've been as successful as they've been.
Speaking of chaotic wrestling, is there a moment or memory that sticks out to you from your time there so far?
I have so many chaotic
there's
memories.
A lot.
I think it's hard to pick one. I think, there's one of my favorite chaotic memories, and it's a picture that I was lucky enough to be able to have still, is as a fan, when Chase Del Monte won the New England Championship, he came into the crowd and I put him on my shoulders. And so we have a picture of him holding up the New England Championship and him on my shoulders from when I was a fan and he was just starting up. And so that means a lot to me, right? And so looking back now with those eyes, it's a different feel than it was then. It was the excitement of like, this dude's like about to be a wrestler, man. This is awesome, right? And he did it, right? Like, so he not only did it, he's doing it at a level now where I get to sit back as somebody who's watched him over the last 20 plus years. I'm a fan of his as a person, right? I'm a fan of his as a wrestler. Now I get to watch what he produces with his team and just be in awe of it, right? And so, and Jamie and Adult and all the guys who came before led that charge. And so there's no way this happens without that name recognition, that level of brand recognition that Chaotic Wrestling brought to the table. That was established. The way it's been building since then, it just continues to grow. And I think it's the standard for New England wrestling for sure. And I think anybody who has been around long enough would tell you the same.
Is there a favorite match you got to be on the call for?
I think my first match ever, I was very nervous for, but I'll tell you, it was Fred Bone Crusher Sampson, and it was Brian Fury, and they were. I was on with Rich, and I was like, okay, I was like studying before, and I was really like I was prepped, and I had like numbers and stats and things I wanted to do, and it's like I really just had to learn, like, I just got to call it as it's coming to me, and I got to just call it like I would if I was watching it as a fan, right? And so it's a standout match. I was lucky enough to call some of those big matches. There's Cody Rhodes matches in there. I mean, there's big name guys who came into Chaotic who we had at Night of Stars. I was able enough to be out there and get to watch just incredible, to be on the call for these big, huge, and certainly I could name drop all of those matches. To be a part of that at all is amazing. For me, it's the personal touches. It's the the Logan brothers in a Lowell Street fight. Like those are the matches I think back on and laugh. Or my signature match, I think a match that I would be known for is like a countdown style match is my favorite kind of a match because there's so many, there's 30 stories at least, right? There's 30 characters at least to work with. And then each of them has an intricate subplot going on that you want to kind of establish and talk about, right? So there's all that interplay between groups of people and guys. And so factions and all of that. So I love calling those kinds of matches because of the level of intricacy, because of the drama and the ability to kind of tie in the characters to what's happening in the ring. That's the stuff I love.
What about the Dynasty? Was that another company you were working for?
Dynasty was in New York. Chris Envy ran that, and he's still a professional wrestler who runs under the Dynasty label. He does that here, and so I actually met him. I went to a mall that was having a Jake the Snake signing, and I thought to myself, well, if Jake the Snake's in town, I'm going to go see that. So when I saw him, I thought he must be here for a wrestling promotion. So I walked over to the table and I was like, which one of you is the wrestling promoter? And so the guy just kind of raised his hand. I was like, okay, you're obviously running a show. So I'm a wrestling guy. Do you need a guy? And he was like, what? And I was like, I do wrestling. Like, that's the thing. So, I sent him some videos, and so he worked me into the program. And so I was able to do some fun stuff there. I was able to, ring announce and commentate and be a part of wrestling, pro wrestling in my home state, near to where I grew up. And so for me, that was special. That felt nice to be able to bring that skill set nearer to home. So the Dynasty was a super cool experience.
When we talk about moments, is there an interview you got to condone that sticks out to you?
I think, I was lucky enough in ECCW to get a one-off interview with Tommaso. And so Tommaso Ciampa, was just becoming Tommaso Ciampa at the time. So he was kind of trying to establish himself.
He wasn't penmanship anymore?
He is trying to distance himself from the penmanship. And so I think we were able to cut a really fun promo and one that I enjoyed and one that he was really proud of at the end that we talk about when I see him. He's grabbing me and he's back my chest. Look at this, RJ. You see this? What does this say? And so we joke about the phone. But he had a flip phone in that thing. So to date, I got VHS tapes. I got flip phones. I mean, I'm not old, Chris. Yeah. These are, you probably think I heard of them. Good. Oh, Sanders.
When you look at your career, who are some of your biggest mentors for pro wrestling? Or even commentating and broadcasting in general?
Yeah, I love that question. I love sports broadcasting. So like Gary Cohen for me, right, is the GOAT. Like he is. His storytelling ability, his command of the knowledge, and his ability to pull it up in a quick way. I know he's got somebody in his ears, but beyond that, he's got a natural gift for it. And so I've been in awe of Gary, forever. The Mets broadcast team, I think, is the greatest broadcast team that's ever existed. So I'm obviously very biased there. Yeah, and I feel like it's the best TV show on television, right? Like it's beyond just the New York Mets piece of it. It's super entertaining television. Keith Hernandez is the most entertaining man who's ever lived, easily. Ron Darling's a lovely man. And then you've got, so that 3-man boost's insane. Yeah. And so I think, for me, those are guys, Scooter, Rizzuto, I loved Phil Rizzuto. I just thought, he was way before your time, but Yankees great on the commentary, who would just, holy cow, he just had such a unique voice and an ability to communicate. And he was folksy, which I loved about him. He was very down to earth. He felt like the guy who you sat next to at the bar. And so that level of, and Gary Cohen has that same sort of familiarity feel, like you're talking to your buddy, right? You're hanging out with your pal and you're talking about the game. And I think that's the stuff I love. But from a wrestling standpoint specifically, you got to go, Bobby Heenan, you got to go Jesse Ventura. If you spend any time listening to those guys talk about wrestling and just talking in general, they're the most entertaining humans maybe who ever lived. Yeah. And I think Bobby the Brain Heenan considered himself a wrestler because he was just such an entertainer at heart that he loved the wrestling of it, that he literally was just like, I'm still a wrestler. I just do managing, And so I adore that kind of approach, which is unique, it's smart, and it's self-deprecating to the point of hilarity. And I think, you think of like guys like Heenan in the rat suit, just like, I mean, that is comedy at a level you can't even possibly replicate.
I'm curious for you in pro wrestling. I know you said for Chaotic Wrestling, you at least try to come once a year, but do you have any goals, or even with yoga or anything? Like, what are you up to nowadays?
What do I do? What's this guy up to? He's just hanging out. I gummed at Chaotic and I get to do shows, and that's awesome. I'm doing the yoga, and that's cool. Next steps for me, commentary is a lifetime gig. I think of it like tennis or golf. It's a lifetime sport, right? And so I don't need to, hang it up or retire anytime soon. I can talk about wrestling probably for a while. And so I often joke with Rich Palladino that in 30 years, I will have, like 50 years in, and that's when I'm going to come for his public announcing job at Chaotic. So that's an ongoing bit that we have, which is I've been setting him up for the last 50 years to take his job. And so we joke about, like, eventually I'm going to do that. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to. But we don't have anywhere to go. I say it to Rich all the time. It's like, what do we got going on, Rich?
Yeah.
Nothing, right? And so, you got Julian and you got Pat Matthews.
Scotty Slade sometimes.
Scotty Slade will sneak in, the day of the Chaotic. And so you got these just incredible guys doing the commentary now. And anytime I come, they're just so kind and so giving and are so welcoming to me that I just love being there with them, and we get done and we smile and we hug, and it's a family. And I think that's, I'm Weird Uncle RJ, but I come through and I get to be a part of the action and a part of the fun. And to me, that's what this is all about. It's been one of the coolest things I've gotten to be a part of in my life. The yoga is an outpouring of that. Like everything kind of comes back to this baseball wrestling thing, right? It all kind of comes back around to these things that you love and you care about, you pour yourself into. And I know you love and care about wrestling in that same way. And so I want to put over you and what you're doing because I love that you're the CVV of the indies, baby. You're doing the thing. And so keep doing it, keep pressing, keep grinding. You're going to be undeniable. And that is going to put you way ahead of these other clowns trying to do this. So that's my promo for you. Keep killing it out there, dude, because the world needs more guys telling these stories, and you're the right guy to do it. So keep doing it.
Thank you, RJ. And thank you for doing this, man. I've ended every interview the same now. I remember the day asking you to say yes. I was like, maybe he will, maybe he won't. I was so grateful when you did. But I've ended every interview the same now. The day you decide it's all done, which, like you said, another 30 years to come. But the day you decide it's all done, what do you want RJ Deluise's legacy in pro wrestling to be?
The legacy is, that I made people laugh. Nice. And at hopefully at my expense or at the expense of something ridiculous that I did or said, and that they left, just feeling like they had fun and they saw me and they laughed. Right. Nice. Like that's, I want it to be a light feeling. I want it to be, that silly guy's here again feeling. And so that for me is like, I get to be that guy now and not, the up and comer who thinks he's awesome and has a big ego and is whatever. That was me 20 years ago. I'm just happy to be here now. And so I was happy then, and I maybe had goals or things I wanted to attain. Now it's just I'm having fun and enjoying it and glad to be there. I appreciate it more. And so they often talk about youth being wasted on the young, and it's true. It's you don't realize how cool this is until you're not doing it. And so I've been lucky enough to sustain a career where I've been able to jump in and out and do it at the level that I want to do it. But I hope that my legacy is one of kindness and humor.
Yeah. RJ, man, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for everything. Ever since I've interviewed the Logans and talked to you, man, I so much appreciate it.
I appreciate you, brother. Yeah. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you for doing this, and thank you everybody for watching this episode. This was Best for Business.
Thank you for watching this episode of Best for Business. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, because this is Best for Business.